I am the rock. The lyric says, I am the hand you hold on to. I am the voice that is always saying, I will give you rest. Sometimes it seems like somebody has to bash our knees to make us stop and kneel down. Even if it's in humility or not, we always have to come to a place of surrender. And all the while, Sugar Daddy is waiting for you to climb in its metaphoric loving arms. I had to say metaphoric because we often humanize God. We get it twisted thinking that God was made in our image. Nope, it's the other way around, folks. That's Ebonics for probably. Why we don't trust God. We think he's just a slob like me. Well, hopefully if you do refer to yourself as a slob, it's an acronym for spirit-led, obviously blessed. If we minimize God's might, then it's difficult to affirm faith in her. I switch up the pronouns and God. It's all inclusive, so rather than make God non-binary and total, I just mix it all up. Now faith, the evidence. We constantly get proof. Every day, all day long. Don't we? I tell my students this about life and what they call death. Some of you know my Uncle Corky died this week. And it was rough because he was the one who would make you laugh. Reverend Anthony came to my office to pray with me, and what happens, in this case, it happened that while he was praying for me, I would see my Uncle Corky, who was a bus driver, sitting behind the wheel, the steering wheel. And then I realized that he was moving on to his next stop. Now the same thing happened with my Aunt Sadie a few weeks ago when Robert was praying with me, and I saw a whole nother family scenario with her greeting my great-grandmother and all of this, and so I just call heaven the dimension of the real. See, it's not particularly a place with fluffy clouds, it's just energy in its purity. Now I think of moments like that as evidence. Pure spirit doesn't just activate my imagination when someone is praying with me or for me. It gives me permission to see things as they really are. Evidence is when all you got is a vision and the congregation comes forth with most of the budget for beautifying our church here. That's evidence. Evidence is when a former presidential candidate who was a prisoner of war and a decent person who didn't diminish himself by degrading his opponent, but by complimenting him. I was able to love someone who was in a different political party, not because of his choice of political parties, but because of his essence. See, we don't act like we know what we're saying when we're talking the talk. Because sometimes we play crazy, but the evidence is clear. God is real. God is the rock. So finally, when we are knocked to our knees, we take the hand of God. Let me make this plain and get real with a capital R. And I stopped acting like it's me that's got to do everything. I let go of what? The illusion that it's me doing the work. That's how, I tell people, they laugh when I say it. They were like, oh, this and that, and it's so rough, and it's such a struggle. And I just look at them and say, that's because you think you're doing the work. So when they see you, can they see the Father? Or is your bloated nothingness getting in the way of God's presence being evident? I'm talking about the substance of things hoped for, not mind games. According to Ernest Holmes, faith is inwardly embodied so much that the mind can no longer deny it. We talk about consciousness. Well, consciousness has more flavors than Heinz 57. Consciousness is awareness. So what is your awareness on right now? Is it subjective acceptance? Can you really do what Byron Katie asks us to do and love what is? Or does it have to be my way? Some may think that about me. I don't care. I don't get twisted by that kind of nonsense. But what I do know is I'm not attached to outcome like most people. But I'm not crazy, so I'm not going to try to push the river, right? So I just want to honor my agreements. Don Ruiz says, be impeccable with your word. Sometimes we mess up. But what I do after that is what matters. I don't have control over you, but I do have control over me. And I believe in the invisible more than I do in the visible, in the crazy that my eyes show me. See, I read about the murders and shootings that were going on in Chicago in the past 24 hours. And they named the streets where people were killed or where people were shot. And I've been on those various streets. And when I've been on those various streets, most of the time I was doing something to quell the violence in the city. And when I think about being on those various streets at any given time, including the days when I was out there on the street trying to promote peace, sometimes with the protection of the men of Islam, they might have been a block away, and God knows a bullet travels faster than that. I would be in my car, promoting, music that had a message of peace or a message of, self-esteem or message trying to let the gang members hear truth. And I was never hit. And when you go right into the heart of the activity and you don't get hit, then you get really humbled, because there were 4 neighborhoods in Chicago in the last 24 hours that got hit, and I had been doing work in each one of those. So I give thanks that I was not one of the fallen. I got to live to speak this word. And I'm speaking this word to you about faith because I know that the evidence of peace may not always be apparent. But it's the invisible principle that matters. Holmes says, quoting Jesus, of course, that faith has made thee whole. So what do you believe in? Where do you believe from? See, all month I've been speaking on the monthly theme, spiritual mind treatment, the form. But I haven't been using those words. Treatment is really about speaking your word, but living is about practical application. So although a lot of New Thought people like to deny that we are Christian, even though more than a third of the textbook is about the teachings of Jesus, we're also practical Buddhists, practical Hindi, practical Taoists, practical Shintoists. We're practical pagans. Now, even though pagan got twisted to mean that you worship idols, it's really about worshiping the God in nature. So let's not get caught up in words and terminology. Let's deal with truth. Yes. The first Sunday, my topic was the nature of God. That's like recognition. So first, you got to think about what God is. That's when they were throwing down that song, God Is. And how do you recognize God? It's not by form. It's by substance. Are you listening to your inner critic? That's what we talked about at that time. Or are you listening to the mental melodrama? And I suggested that you get clear through spiritual practices and to choose to awaken from confusion and study the nature of God as your very soul. The second Sunday, my topic was, I am a spiritual being. I'm here for my God to reveal. Remember that song? I was talking about stretching, breathing into the pain, breathing into the tension. And that treatment deals with thought, not people. And if we get stuck on one thought, then we're closing our hearts because we're now invested in the condition rather than the possibility of penetrating the condition through faith. Yes. So just as you can have thought about what's going on in the current news, you can also allow yourself to consider rewriting the script of Once Upon a Time. So Once Upon a Time can now be more than here's what I see. But we can then co-create what we want to see. So last week the title was The Kingdom of Heaven. And I asked you to love in order to transform. I asked you to pray in order to release. And I asked you to flow by embracing your divine qualities. I asked if you were bringing heaven or bringing hell. I asked that you look at the energy that's passing through you or whether you were trying to block it. Because when you block it, that makes it stay. And so we talked about how fear doesn't like change. And how nothing and no one can stand in your way but you. And we can face our fears in order to dispel them.
Yes, amen.
And as a spiritual being, we realize the truth of who we are. Now that was unification and realization part 1. Here's realization part 2. Again, from the Untethered Soul, Singer says, when you truly awake spiritually, you realize that you are caged. Didn't think about that, I'm sure. Because when you realize that you're caged, you're like, not me, I'm not caged. What you talking about, Reverend Savior? Do you move past your comfort zone? Talk to me now. Yes. Do you tell people what you really think? No, I mean, you don't have to be nasty about it. I mean, you're intelligent enough to be able to find a way to speak your truth, right? How do you set limits on yourself? And that's for you to ask yourself. Just ask yourself these questions. Do I speak my truth? That's also being impeccable with your word. That's also saying, have you set limits on yourself? Because you're the one who's caged you in, nobody else has. I mean, you know, the children that are being detained have truly been caged in, but how are you caging yourself in? How are you limiting yourself? How are you creating boundaries that you will not cross? How are you creating a place where you will not allow other people to come into? Okay? So you don't have to tell me, because when you hit the bars of that cage, you know it.
Yeah.
You know, they have electronic fences for dogs now. They're invisible. So are the fences that you have put up around you. When you hit those barriers, you must be willing to go beyond them. Okay? Now, when you're an athlete and you hit a limit, you allow yourself to love those edges because they're pointing you to your greater yet to be. Michael Jordan and other great athletes have learned it. They've learned not to be satisfied with defeat, but to be motivated to be greater. That's not just for the athletes, that's for us too. But first, you have to do what Michael Singer says. He calls it letting go of false solidity. And when you're holding on to an inner world, you know, you have this in your mind, everything is supposed to be the way it is, it's supposed to look the same way it always looked, and everybody's going to act the same way that they've always acted. And, you know, you write this script and you think that this is the way things are going to look. But that's not stability. That's what the Buddhists call clinging. And clinging is really holding on to a certain thing, a certain set of thoughts, a certain set of emotions. Clinging is primal, Singer says. So understand, you are not your thoughts. That's a big key component of this book that we're finishing up today. I still have the MP3s going, but you are not your thoughts, okay? You are not your emotions. You are not your body. Course in Miracles says, I am not a body. I am free. I am still as God created me. So think beyond the simple relationship between thoughts, emotions, and body. You're more than that. Say to your neighbor, I am more than that. So when you build your sense of self around your thoughts, when you build your sense of self around your emotions, when you build your sense of self around your body, then no wonder you're having frustrations, no wonder you're having suffering, no wonder you're in trauma and turmoil. You know, you start making up all of this stuff about yourself that isn't true. And just because the thoughts come in, that doesn't mean that they're true. If they're not life-affirming, then they need to be dispelled from your mind because they're taking up space where you can truly be tuned in to your divine essence that really has something to say to you. And when you're so busy walking around talking about your feelings are hurt and they hurt me and they disrespected me and all of this, and that's still not who you are because you are not a victim unless you allow yourself to stay in that cage being defined by somebody else's thoughts. So understand that you are not your body. Whether you are a brick house or whether you look like you're big as a house, that's still not who you are. Okay? That is the container in which your consciousness has outpictured your need for protection, Oh, I know that. I know I gained weight for protection as a minister. Marianne Williamson told me that one day. I was at this symposium she was doing on her book about weight. It's called something about weight loss. And she said, oh, I know, because that's why I'm not a minister anymore, because you be gaining weight for protection, girl. But then whose responsibility is it to take care of me? Right? And so, yeah, there are causes out there and there are effects, but then what do we do about it once we come to the realization that this cause has produced this effect? We create a new cause. That's why we're called new thoughts, not because most of us are having a new thought, because most of us are not. But because you, as a creative being, as a spiritual being, as an emanation of God, have the power to create a new effect by choosing a new frame of thinking, a frame of mind, a way of thinking that is different from the one that got you in this mess in the first place. Einstein told you cannot solve the problem at the level of the problem. So you're going to have a new mind in order to approach it in a new way, in order to have a new result. Okay, now, you cannot find your essence while seeking to define yourself as one set of thoughts and emotions. You don't want to be boring, do you? Okay. Even if your set of thoughts is, I am a woman, the you that created you is greater than one gender. Your beliefs are not you either. They can change. Your job is not who you are. That can change. Because truly, when you retire, you don't have to be lost. When you change careers, you don't have to be lost. We put facades out there. And then, now that we have projected them out to the world, we think we got to live up to them forever and ever. Amen. At night. Why? Why do we do that? Do we want to be taken seriously? I mean, really? Who cares about what people think about you? We are evolving beings. If you don't grow, you go. Amen. You want to grow or you want to stay? Just ask them. So Neil Simon, a great playwright, died today. I'm a playwright. I've written several plays, produced several plays, but that's not all I am. My work has been done on both coasts. People know me as different expressions in different roles. But I am not just that one definition. Yes, amen. What if the person who created the Etzel only identified themselves as that? Young people don't know what I'm talking about, the Etzel. That was a car that lasted about 2 years. Ford Motor Company would not be in existence today if that person identified itself as the Etzel. So just because you create in a certain way at a certain time doesn't mean that that's all that you are. So, what are creative beings but people who create? Okay? We have the ability to be more. Things are going to happen, Singer says, and you're going to feel the tendency to close. You're going to want to close your heart. You're going to want to close your mind. You're going to want to just stay safe, be like a turtle, right? So you can either go with it or let it go. If you find it hard to stay open, he says, then meditate. Because meditation helps you to keep your heart open. When your heart starts to tighten, relax it. Staying open puts you on the path of unconditional happiness. Deciding to be happy will also allow you to become more enlightened. Somebody's real happy back there right now. So the invitation is to choose to be happy. Choose to enjoy life. Be happy while you are here. A lot of people are opting out of this dimension right now, and y'all know that. And we're all going to transition. Wouldn't you rather take nice luggage than old beat up luggage with you on your journey? Just saying. So, Singer asks us, if the game is to stay happy, make sure you win. I'm going to read a section from the book. Do you think God likes to be around people that are happy or people that are miserable? It's not hard to tell. Just think about it by imagining that you're God. You created the heavens and earth so that you can play and experience yourself. And now you're dropping down to check on your humans. So God asks the first human he sees, how are you doing? The human says, what do you mean, how am I doing? Well, do you like it here? No, I don't like it here. Why not? What's wrong? That tree is bent in 5 places. I want it to be straight. This person went out with somebody else, and that person ran up a $100 phone bill. This person has a nicer car than mine, and that person dresses funny. It's just terrible. Plus, my nose is too big, my ears are too small, and my toes are weird. I'm not happy with it. I don't like any of it. So God says, well, what about the animals? The animals, the ants and mosquitoes bite you. It's a terrible thing. I can't go out at night because there are all these animals out there. They howl and poop all over the place, and I just don't like it. Do you think God likes listening to this? He says, what do you think? I'm a complaint department? Then he goes and visits somebody else. He asks, how are you doing? The person says, I'm ecstatic. God says, wow, how do you like things? They're beautiful. Everything I look at just creates waves of joy inside me. I look at that bent tree, it just blows me away. That ant comes and bites me, and it's just so amazing that a tiny ant could be brave enough to bite a giant like me. Now you guess who God wants to hang out with. One of the ancient names for God in the yogic tradition is Satchidananda, eternal conscious bliss. God is ecstasy. God is as high as it gets. If you want to be close to God, learn to be joyful. And in closing, I'm going to say this. Don't resist bliss. Say to your neighbor, don't resist bliss. When you relax and release, you go through tremendous spiritual growth. Life is giving you the gift of growth. Deep within us, there is a direct connection to the divine. Choose to identify with that part. You already know the other stuff. Grow past the tension. Release the lower vibrations. Let yourself feel the love of God. Then your soul, your Atma, falls into oneness. That's when you can say, I and my Father are one. John 10:30. God truly loves us. God is not judging us. Love sees the beauty in you. True love looks past the humanness. He who is without error cast the first stone. John 8:7. No stones were thrown. Forgive them. They know not. Luke 23:34. God's nature is light, love, perfection, compassion, giving. You can't make it stop loving you.
Amen.
Think about the ecstasy of God. That's what God sees when it looks at you. Namaste.